Welcome back to the SRM 3D Prints channel. My name is Tim. So today, just to show that this design is definitely not finished yet, we're still working out some of the details, I need to mount this power switch, fuse, and plug receptacle somewhere around the power supplies. Now, my original plan was to have it sit sideways like this and stick over, but it's awful tight in here. You know, I thought maybe this low profile would look really good. I don't think I'm going to go for that. And then my second thought was to move it down below the power supplies and set it down here, but I don't like that either. So my thought is to actually mount it something like this, tucked into the framework here. And we're going to integrate this mount as part of this housing. So it's all one unified unit. But yeah, so that's what we're doing. I'm going to take some measurements and figure out what I want to do. I already preloaded some of this stuff into my little CAD program I use. So it'll be a lot easier to just pick up wherever I leave off here. So I think I just really need this back spacing measurement, because it looks like as long as I center up this device, it'll be almost flush with that when it gets done. Anyway, bring you back once we get into the program.
So the first thing we're going to do is start lining up these STLs that I have, and then we're going to make a new base plate. And I'm just using the original STLs as kind of my starting point. I know how far I need to go to make clearance for the power supplies, and then I took and duplicated it so I can make the kind of the stick out wide portion that's going to overlap the edges of the power supplies. And so that's kind of my basic reference. From here I'm going to develop or put the holes in their locations, because ultimately this piece that I have the cutout of is going to go away. It was designed for a different project and won't work in this particular application. Now that I have the holes located for where the screws will actually go through, we're going to start building up the sides of this box. Just basically just line up another square and then bringing it up to the right height. And then once that's all good to go, I will duplicate it, drag it to the other side, duplicate the bottom, bring that up to the top. At which point I realized that my piece was out of position and needed to be shaped different, so I rolled it around, and I'm just dragging it up a little bit. And then I'll make the back piece the same thickness so I don't have a weird step on the inside of my cart, and repeating. And this is one of those frustrating parts about this particular program. You get out of position, it's sometimes hard to maneuver things around. So, but anyway, so I got this hole all squared away, and now we're going to start building up more of the sides of the box. And I wasn't sure how this was going to be shaped in the end, so I just started laying pieces out till I was kind of happy with them, and then ended up changing them all a whole bunch, as you guys will see here just shortly. When I moved this other piece out of the way, I made sure I lined it back up on the same plane that it was before, so that way if I needed to change anything, it would be no big deal. I could put it right back and realign it. And here I'm just closing up the back side of the plug box, and I'm again using the original piece as a thickness template. So now I know exactly how wide those side wings are supposed to be. And once you do one, you just go and duplicate it and make another one for the other side. So the original design plan was to actually have the cables come out around where the mounting screw was going to be, and then use the upper half of this housing to clamp the cables in place. Decided I didn't really like that overall plan, so I altered it to where that screw mount is all by itself. And again, we're just kind of feeling this out as we go, and so there I extended the base plates. Now we're completely across. I need to duplicate some of the other features, so yeah, here I am just completely undoing what I just did. So there's the basic box. Then we're going to add in some new ears. Oh, I guess we're not, yeah, we're adding in the lower ears, and we'll add in the upper ears here. Duplicate it again, go on to the other side. Up next, we're going to make the pass-through holes for the cabling. So there's actually going to be 2 holes in the back here. And basically what I'm doing is I made the holes just a little bit oversized, and then eventually there'll be a clamp that the mounting screw will lock onto. So here I'm duplicating that, and again, with the very difficult to maneuver things with this program sometimes. So those punch through, they're nice and centered. We'll leave those alone, and I think we're getting to the point where, okay, that's right, we're gonna make our new base plate. Runs all the way across at the halfway point on those cables. Now we got a couple details we need to recreate. We need to recreate these dowels. So they had a little bit of a chamfer on the end of them. I'm just using the original one to duplicate it. Everything's all nice and lined up now, so I can remove my template piece. And now we get into the fun part, where I got to start cleaning up this overall design. Tinkercad used to have this fillet that was right in their featured shape generators. Now they moved it, which makes it not quite so convenient to find, but yeah, you just gotta keep digging. So I'm just going to use this to round all the corners off, and again, making sure you click off of each piece before you duplicate it, because otherwise you'll end up where you'll duplicate funky and do weirdness. So I'm going to bring this piece up and position it there. Duplicate, move it over, so now we got all those corners rounded. And we're going to rotate this 180. Narrow it up, and then we're going to turn it into a solid piece once I get it all figured out how I want it to be shaped. So I hit the duplicate and it actually distorted it, so I had to click off, reduplicate it again. It took me a little bit of time to decide how I was going to split this housing apart, and so I ended up just making an arbitrary cut, and then just very carefully bringing down each of the sides to match that overall height. And then what I'm going to do is just select just those pieces, and then I'm going to duplicate them and then bring them up, and then I change the color on them to make it a little easier. And I'm just going to bring it all down to square up the height there. Made it a lot easier to differentiate which pieces go where in this design. A lot of times in this program I'll make this back panel. I would have made it in like 2 pieces, so that way I can have a dedicated center line. It makes it a lot easier to line stuff up. So when I was working on the Foundry Special pattern, I did a lot of things off of the center line like that. But here I am just making a little drop it down tab, and then I'm going to duplicate it, bring it over the other side, and just still playing with it, seeing how I want to do this from a structural standpoint. And I actually undid what I did there, and then just brought it where it had a little bit of overlap, and I'm going to add a bevel piece on the back of it, just so that way it prints really nicely, because this will be printed, this top piece will be printed on its back, and the bottom piece will be printed on its front. You know, it's kind of important when you're working on a design to know which orientation you want to print everything. So now I got the first one in place. I just duplicated it and reduced it down to the final size. So that should work, and just position the next one in place, rotate it 180 out, and again just verifying it's flush up against the back wall and centered on the part. And now here I'm trimming the drop down tab just a little bit, so that way when I split these two pieces, it'll not overlap at all. So that'd cause some serious issues once it gets all done. Now I'm giving the part a quick once over before I start chamfering the edges, and it took me a little bit of thought to decide what parts needed to be chamfered and which parts weren't. So I got this edge is good. I'm going to duplicate it and on the other side, and then I'm going to just take the exact same piece and reduce it down for the inside. So that'll give me a nice thick wall all the way around. Should print really nicely when we're done. Up next is a little bit of detail work. Once I get this little chamfered edge done, we're going to actually get rid of the squared off corners on the inside of this design. So I'm going to bring over a roof, or one of the round roof sections, set it to the same width and everything, rotate it around, and the same depth. And then we're going to line it up on the center line there and get it just perfect. And I sat there and played with it just a little bit till I was happy with it. So there's our first piece is done. And then we're going to bring those up to the same overall position before we duplicate the round section. I made a choice here that was kind of a pain in the butt because I didn't have really a better way of doing it without totally dividing up and trying to reproduce a thing. So I opted to just leave the ends of that roof section kind of sticking through. And now I've made so I'll use the actual framework to cut off the edges. So here we are. Here's the first look at it. We're going to rotate it around. So now that looks like a good solid piece. Overall, we don't have any real sharp edges. It should print pretty good. So now we get to switch it back, and what I should have done is just hit the back button on the control panel to undo the change to a hole. So it made it a little more difficult, but anyway, I ended up just having to go back through item by item for all the ones that were supposed to be a negative and reselect them as negatives. You know, not the end of the world, but yeah, select the whole thing and print it off again. And here we are, we got a nice clean model. And overall, I think it looks pretty good. It will fit the job very well.
All right, well, I'm going to call this project a wrap. The mount worked out the way I was hoping to. It's nice and snug and fairly low profile with the edge of the frame. And to get access in here, you take off, there's a screw in the back and 2 screws in the front. They're not the most convenient in the world to get access, but then this cover just lifts off and you'll be able to get into all the wiring for it. But yeah, it just has I'm going to have it where it has an on-off switch. It also has a fuse, so you can't exceed 10 amps on this whole assembly. And then this is just a standard 3-prong cable like you'd have for a computer monitor or a computer. So fairly modular setup, so you won't, nothing unusual here. There's also 2 power or cord outlets in the back, so I can feed each of these 2 power supplies comfortably. But anyway, you guys will get to see this in action once I get it wired up. But until next time, have a great day.